Teacher Rose, and welcome to our course subject, Introduction to the Philosophy of the Human Person. For today's presentation, it is divided into three parts, namely, Part 1 is the nature and functions of philosophy. Part 2 is the philosophical tools and processes. And Part 3 is philosophical reflections. After this presentation, you are expected to accomplish the following most essential learning competencies. Number 1, distinguish a holistic perspective from a partial point of view. Number 2, realize the value of doing philosophy in obtaining a broad perspective on life. And number 3 is do a philosophical reflection on a concrete situation from a holistic perspective. The first question being asked in this presentation is, what is philosophy? For more than 2,500 years ago, a sage in South Asia named Gautama Buddha declared that life is a suffering. This is the first of his four noble truths. And indeed, if you look at your life, you will see that it is a series of challenges that you have to overcome if you want to survive. It feels like you are competing in a race in which you are required to successfully jump hurdles in order to win. And each challenge in life is really a questions or a bunch of questions that you have to answer. For example, if you are not feeling well, you might ask, why I am feeling this way? How can I overcome? Or how can I overcome it? How it will affect my life and the people around me? Philosophy as our subject matter for this presentation is really all about questions and answers. And since by now you are already asked and answered hundreds of questions, your life experience already prepared you to take our philosophical journey starting now. The first part of our presentation is the nature and functions of philosophy. Traditionally, philosophy is defined as love of wisdom because it came from two Greek words, philos means love and sophia means wisdom. You might find it strange to connect love to philosophy. You might think of philosophy as a purely intellectual discipline which has nothing to do with love. You might believe love is a romance, poetry, intense passion in which you are willing to lay down your life. But you will see that philosophy can also be pursued passionately. In fact, some people like Socrates died for truth. It is this centrality of love to philosophy that we call people who engage in philosophy as philosophers or lovers of wisdom. Next is the origin of philosophy. So Greece is the birthplace of philosophy in the West. To be more precise, it is the ancient Greek city of Miletus in the western coast of what is now Turkey that gave birth to philosophy. It is in this city that the first philosopher in the West, Thales, lived. Thales is the father of philosophy in the Western civilization. He lived between 624 and 546 BCE, a contemporary of the Lydian king Roselius and the statesman Solon. But what made Thales a philosopher is his desire to know the ultimate stuff that makes up the different things we perceive. You see, when we look at the world, we encounter different things: peoples, trees, clouds, mountains, river, etc. Now, Thales believed that despite the different things we encounter, there is one underlying stuff or substance in which everything is composed. He believes that there is one in the many. Thales was the first individual who tried to reduce the multiplicity into a unity. But his explanation of natural phenomena is devoid of gods and goddesses of the old religion of Greece. It is completely rational. It represents a departure from the mythological religion of Greece. Thales' approach highlights the difference between religion and philosophy. Religion rests on faith, while philosophy rests on reason. In the philosophical activity, Thales' greatest contribution to philosophy is not his identification of water as the ultimate stuff of the universe. His greatest contribution is the problem he posed. What is the ultimate stuff of the universe? And his approach in solving that problem. Studying Thales makes us realize that philosophical activity is characterized by three things. First, in terms of scope, philosophy involves the widest generalization. While people concern themselves with shoes and clothes, the latest gossip about their favorite celebrities, their crushes, philosophers concern themselves with big issues pertaining to the truth, the good, the just, the beautiful, and the existence of practically all things. While scientists concern themselves with scientific knowledge, historians with knowledge of the past, economists with knowledge of supply and demand, philosophers concern themselves with the nature of knowledge as such, which embraces all type of knowledge previously mentioned and more. Second, philosophy is all about fundamentals. A fundamental is the root cause that explains almost everything in a given context. To understand this, imagine that knowledge is like building with levels. Now that the higher level depends on the lower levels. If somehow the lower levels crumbles, then all the higher levels that rest upon it will collapse. A fundamental is like the lower floor that supports everything above it. That kind of support is exactly what philosophy provides. If somehow philosophical ideas like consciousness and existence disappear, then knowledge of any kind will not make any sense because there will be nothing to know and no one to know. Third, philosophy is driven by the desire to integrate things into a one coherent whole. As the celebrated philosopher George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel said, the true is the whole. If you notice, Thales wants to reduce the multiplicity of things into a single stop. He desires to find the one in the many. Next is the branches of philosophy. Since philosophy is concerned is vast, we have to divide it into different branches. Each branch will focus on a specific area of philosophy. To understand the branches of philosophy, let us return to the three central philosophical questions we explored earlier. First, the questions, or first question, where am I? By the time we reach adulthood, we believe we know the answer to this question. In fact, we believe that the answer is obvious that we don't bother to look closely at the question itself. Where am I? Well, let's say I'm in Manila. You don't need philosophy to answer that one. But if you ask a series of where questions, where is Manila? Where is the Philippines? Which at first seems childish, you eventually end up with the universe. And here, we have to stop asking the where questions. Where is the universe is an absurd question. The universe does not exist in a place. What kind of place is the universe? Is it governed by laws? If so, what laws? The study of the universe as a whole is the province of metaphysics. Metaphysics is further subdivided into ontology, which studies existence as such philosophical anthropology, which deals with the fundamental and essential characteristic of human nature. The second question, how do I do it or how do I know it? It concerns the nature of human knowledge and the way to obtain it. How do we obtain knowledge? Do we obtain knowledge by revelation, intuition, instinct, or reason? Can we achieve certainty or are we doomed to suffer perpetual doubt? Is knowledge based on the things we perceive or from something else? This is the concern of epistemology, which can be defined as the branch of philosophy that studies the nature and means of human knowledge. We need epistemology to guide us in knowing since we make mistakes from time to time. So the first two branches of philosophy, metaphysics and epistemology, are called cognitive branches. So these branches provide a description of being or existence and knowing. They are the foundation of understanding of any philosophical system. The next three branches of philosophy, ethics, politics, and aesthetics, can be classified as the normative branches of philosophy because they are concerned with the standard of the good. If the cognitive branches are concerned with what is, the normative branches are concerned with what ought to be. The most basic normative branch of philosophy is ethics or morality. It is concerned with the last of the three questions central to philosophy. What should I do? Ethics can be regarded as the technology of philosophy because it tells us how human beings ought to function as a human being. But in order to describe how human beings ought to act, we must first know what a human being is. So this last is provided by metaphysics and epistemology. This is especially true of philosophical anthropology, a sub-branch of metaphysics which studies the metaphysical nature of men. So metaphysics and epistemology are the foundation of ethics. What then is ethics or morality? According to Ayn Rand, ethics or morality is a branch of philosophy that provides a human being with a code of values to guide man's choice and actions. The choices and action that determine the course of his life. It is concerned with the values man ought to pursue, the interrelationship of those values, and the means to obtain them, or what we call virtue. The last two normative branches of philosophy are politics and aesthetics. So they are derived from ethics. Ethics is concerned with the good of human being as a human being. If we apply ethics in a social context, then it becomes politics. The concern, therefore, of ethics is broader than politics. It studies the good for human beings in any setting, whether society is present or not. An individual who is alone in an island still has to follow ethical principles if he wishes to survive. So, what then is politics? Again, following Rand's definition, politics is a branch of philosophy which defines the principles of a proper social system. According to Rand, proper means proper for human beings, which presupposes that one knows what a human being is. So since knowledge about human being is provided by the cognitive branches of philosophy, the foundation of politics ultimately rests on the metaphysics and epistemology. The last of the normative branch is aesthetics. Aesthetics studies the nature of art. It is concerned with the nature and the objective judgment of beauty. The second part of our presentation is about philosophical tools and processes. Philosophy as a science is also a systematized body of knowledge, but unlike other sciences which employs observation and experimentation to prove their theories, philosophy uses reason to arrive at a certain knowledge or truth. At the onset, Greek philosophers gave us a hint on how to use our intellect to understand realities around us. The tools that they frequently utilize are the following. Number one is philosophical questions. Philosophy was born because of ignorance. If one is ignorant, he asks questions, and if he keeps on questioning, the more knowledge he acquires. So once a person stops questioning, he ceases to become a philosopher. In our daily struggles, one needs to ask questions, simple, serious, and deep questions that we have to grapple with. A philosopher is like a child who has an inquisitive mind, who never stops asking questions and finding answers. Socrates went further, not just asking questions for himself, but possessed questions to people, which is the beginning of series of questions and responses from participants. His method is called dialectics. The Socratic method, also known as method of Elenchus, electic method, or Socratic debate is a form of cooperative argumentative dialogue between individuals based on asking and answering questions to stimulate critical thinking and to draw out ideas and underlying propositions. Aristotle said that it was the pre-Socratic philosopher Xenophon of Elea who invented dialectic, of which the dialogues of Plato are the examples of the Socratic dialectical method. According to Kant, however, the ancient Greeks used the word dialectic to signify the logic of false appearance or semblance. Dialectic is a term used to describe a method of philosophical argument that involves some sort of contradictory process between opposing sides. As a dialectical method, it is a discourse between two or more people holding different points of view about the subject but wishing to establish the truth through a reasoned argument. Number two in philosophical tools and processes is logical reasoning. In philosophy, reasoning is the process of thinking about something in a logical way in order to form a conclusion or judgment. It has been the method institutionalized by the triumvirate Greek philosophers, especially Aristotle. Philosophy is about answering questions. Reasoning is the method we use in doing philosophy. However, although it is necessary for any competent engagement with philosophy, it is not the end all and be all of philosophy. All branches of philosophy employ reasoning in explaining their arguments. For example, the concept of right or wrong, which is the domain of ethics, base their arguments in human reason alone in contrast with theology which is dependent from the Bible as the source of its moral teachings. So reasoning, however, is the domain of one branch of philosophy, which is epistemology. So one type of logical reasoning is the deductive reasoning. So we have here the example. So premise 1 says, all human beings are mortal. Premise 2 says, but the President of the Philippines is a human being. And then we arrived at the conclusion that, therefore, the President of the Philippines is mortal. Here we are taught to arrive at a certain truth of knowledge in a logical process. In contrast to that, we have inductive reasoning begins with a particular to a universal argument. For example, premise. Student A, B, C, D, E, N, F are wearing school ID. Conclusion. Therefore, all students are wearing ID. So the above examples show the logical process wherein by reasoning one arrives at a certain truth of knowledge. So logic starts with the origin of ideas, terms, proposition or premises, syllogism or others. So these terms are the basic structure of argument. Unfortunately, this branch of philosophy is equivalent to one subject requirement in any course in the tertiary level. The third part of our presentation is about philosophical reflections. In the midst of our present crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, consistently, The government keeps on reminding us the essential of things and concerns that are necessary during the quarantine period, whether under ECQ, BCQ, or MECQ. In our case, we change our competencies and emphasize the most essential ones. This is the essence of philosophy. It tries to separate the essence of things versus accidentals and necessary versus contingent. It is concerned of what is the substance and ultimate causes of things. So when we venture into philosophizing, we see the greater perspective of all things and see the ultimate purpose or reason for our existence. Most of us are so engrossed with individual trees and we miss the whole forest, as the saying goes. We are always predisposed to attend to the details of the problem rather than look at the situation as a whole. This is true in our understanding of the objects, events, realities, and situations around us. So, reflection is the process that would aid in understanding the holistic point of view of what is going on around us. Reflection is an activity that requires a person to examine his or her thoughts, feelings, and action and learn from experience. Philosophers always search for the essence of things and the ultimate reasons for our existence. Its trajectory is to see the bigger picture about everything. This process is called philosophical reflection. According to Gabriel Marcel, philosophical reflection is the act of giving time to think about the meaning and purpose of life. He mentioned two types, namely primary reflection, which is the ability to think logically, the ability of the mind to construct and evaluate arguments. It examines its object by abstraction, by analytically breaking it down into its constituent part. It is concerned with definitions, essences, and technical solution to problems. The second type is secondary reflection. According to Marcel, this type of reflection enables us to look deeper into our experiences and see the bigger picture of reality. It integrates the fragmented and compartmentalized experience into a whole. It is the idea that various systems like physical, biological, or social should be viewed as whole, not merely as a collection of parts. In effect, we see the broader perspective of life. Reflection is not exclusive for philosophy. In fact, it is employed in any endeavor, research, or disciplines. In research, it is called methodological approach. So moral theology employs the stop sign as guidepost of moral decision making. S is for search out the facts. It is necessary that all means should be exhausted to better understand the issue. T is to think, reflect and analyze the facts, its negative or positive effects, advantages or disadvantages. O is how it affects others. We should always consider others in every decision that we make. Every action that we take has always a social dimension. It affects ourselves, others, and community where we belong. Lastly, P stands for pray. We are human beings with limitations. If our best efforts are not enough, then there is no way but look up for divine or God for enlightenment enlightenment and guidance. Praying is a unique tool of theology, which is the realm of faith, but philosophy's reasoning helps in undergoing a theological reflection. As St. Anselm said, it's faith seeking understanding. According to St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the great theologian of the church, quoted in the Latin the relationship between philosophy and theology, Philosophia Ancilia Theologiae, or philosophy is the handmaid of theology, the former is there to serve theology. So reason is also important in theology, not just faith, whether in philosophy, sociology, or other sciences. Reflection is very useful in understanding our daily experiences to broaden our perspective of life. Again, according to St. Thomas Aquinas, Philosophia Ancilia Theologiae. And that's the end of our today's presentation. Again, I'm Teacher Rose, saying share love to everybody, be a blessing to everyone. Thank you.